And the Silver Ferns probably can't put a price on that World Cup victory today, but their win has renewed questions about pay equity for female sports people after officials confirmed that there was no prize money for the winners. By contrast, the Black Caps reaped $3 million for coming second, if you could call it that, in the Cricket World Cup just last week. I asked Women in Sport Aotearoa CEO Rachel Froggatt what she makes of the pay disparity.
In terms of the pay equity and prize money question, something like this of such a momentous, occurrence really brings into very hard limelight the disparity between women's sport and men's sport when it comes to, the commercial opportunity for the athletes performing within those sports. And I think, unfortunately, netball, despite it being one of the biggest women's sports in the world, is still suffering from a historical lack of investment from government, from broadcasters and from sponsors, creating a situation like this where despite, the performance, the prize money simply isn't there.
Yeah, we understand, of course, like any sport, it's a business model. Sport has been a business. Successful sport has had to follow the business model. I don't watch a lot of netball, but from the results I've seen over the last decade or so, it's always a spectacle. It's always a close encounter. This was another 1-point victory by the Silver Ferns. Is it just that not enough countries are playing it? What's the problem?
It's a combination of things, I think. It's particularly a sport that is very well kind of played within the Commonwealth nations, as you might have sort of gathered. And so there is, I think, at the top level, perhaps not as many teams playing as we would like to have, in the future. However, the quality, as you say, has been just exceptional right across the board. And when you look at, the level of play from your Englands, from your Australias, from your New Zealand, it's a battle, They are the mighty Silver Ferns. You're watching athletes at the top of their game really going at it. But I think that underneath that, there's still an ongoing pervasive idea that somehow women's sport is less entertaining or less engaging for the audience. And so for sponsors and for broadcasters and for other potential investors, when they're coming down to prioritising where their money is going, they're still, unconsciously and in most part leaning towards men's sport as the direction that they go in. And I think, some of this has to do with the visibility of women's sport. Some of this has to do with, historical sort of investment levels from within the governing bodies or the national bodies in those countries. But there's a real challenge at hand here, and I think that we are really at a turning point now with women's sport, and particularly with netball. The audience is definitely there, and that's a very old argument. You hear this one a lot. Oh, nobody watches women's sport. I'm sorry, but half of New Zealand was up last night watching the World Cup final. So.
And the competition can be as close as it likes, and it can be entertaining, but it's a brutal, cutthroat world out there, and you've got to compete with other sports. What do you think about the rise in recent years of other sports, traditional male sports that women are now playing to a very, very high professional degree, sevens rugby, just 15-a-side rugby, sports like that? Do you feel with netball that is also threatened in that way?
I don't think it's threatened. My honest feeling, and this is something we've discussed a lot at Women in Sport Aotearoa, is that women's sport, it's a very different world from men's sport, and we're actually all in it together. So everybody doing well and everybody pushing ahead together actually supports the growth as a whole. So it's actually been a fantastic thing to see teams like the Black Ferns coming through, the White Ferns coming through, because the professionalism and the entertainment and the ability that they have to pull audiences brings authenticity to women's sport as a whole. And, netball isn't the only flag bearer now, and they've done brilliantly for decades, doing that for New Zealand. But I think, they've got fantastic company around them now.
And then what about sponsorship? I mean, what happened this time round? Could the team just not attract a sponsor that wanted to sort of, I don't know. I mean, imagine the awareness that they could, any sponsor could get with this big win, but there was nothing there, and as a result, nothing for the players to walk home with.
I think that's more complicated than that, because Netball New Zealand has a number of very good, very strong, very long-standing sponsors like ANZ Bank and Sky Sport, who've been with them for a very long time. I think the difference, though, is that we're looking at a sport that is still semi-professional rather than professional. So these are still, athletes that are having to work part-time jobs in order to fund their ability to participate and to compete on the international level. There's still I guess, and probably quite necessarily, a focus on the development of the system and the ability to bring new, particularly young girls, into the grassroots end of the spectrum. And so, having seen how national sporting organisations, work in New Zealand, Netball New Zealand is doing a brilliant job of just making the sport, delivering the system and the ability for people to participate. But they don't have a lot of loose change rolling around that allows them to take the team to a professional elite level.
Just one more, Rachel. You've had success in the past. You've worked with other sporting organisations. One was the Paralympics in 2016 in Rio, and trying to get an awareness, and we've seen that just take off in recent Olympics. What does Netball New Zealand need to do to get that awareness out there and to change the attitudes that you're talking about?
I think that netball's done exactly what they need to do with performance this morning, in terms of demonstrating that appetite and that audience is there. It's about being able to then convert that into a real commercial property that other sponsors or commercial partners may be interested in getting involved in. This is something that we did with Paralympics New Zealand in 2016. It's how you tell the story, and it's how you create the package that enables a commercial partner to meaningfully engage, with the sport and be able to use it in such a way that their employees, it really resonates with them, that their customers understand it and can see the genuine link between, for the partnership, but also that there is a really logical, and quite values-aligned fit between the organisation that is the sponsor and the sporting organisation, that is partnering with them.
That's Rachel Froggatt. She's the CEO of Women in Sport Aotearoa. Last year it was reported that top Silver Ferns earners were getting about $130,000 a year. Now, you would have heard her reference to ANZ as one of the sponsors of the Silver Ferns. We did ask them today if they would stump up any cash to celebrate the big win. ANZ has just sent this response. As a major sponsor, ANZ offers the Silver Ferns huge congratulations on their inspiring win, and given the time difference between the UK and New Zealand, Netball New Zealand are still working through their plans, so there could be something more there. I'm sure the players and others around the game, many of the supporters will be looking forward to see whether something more comes from ANZ, one of their major sponsors there, after the stunning World Cup victory.